U.S. inflation continued its decline for the seventh straight month in January, but at a slower pace than expected at 6.4%. Hotter than expected inflation raises the prospect of more aggressive rate hikes to come. Turkey and Syria see the death toll from last week's earthquakes top 41,000. Some rescue operations are coming to an end, with the focus now seemingly shifting to helping survivors. The number of people employed in South Korea rose in the first month of 2023, but employment growth slows to the lowest figure in 2020 months. Good afternoon. We begin in Turkey and Syria, where the death toll from the devastating earthquake has surpassed 41,000. The number of casualties in Turkey is reported to be the worst in the country's modern history. With some rescue operations coming to an end, the focus now is seemingly shifting to helping the survivors recover. Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
According to Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan on Tuesday, the devastating earthquakes have now killed over 35,000 people in his country. Syrian officials say over 5,800 people have been killed, meaning the total death toll from the two countries has now surpassed 41,000. President Erdogan compared the damage done by back-to-back earthquakes on February 6th to hundreds of powerful atomic bombs. He also said that while progress had been made in terms of the quality of construction in the country, tighter building regulations are needed.
The fact that 98% of the buildings that collapsed in the latest disaster are ones that are built before 1999 shows the progress we made in the standardization of buildings and inspections. But it also reminds us that we need to be stricter.
Meanwhile, according to the UN Children's Agency UNICEF on Tuesday, more than 7 million children have been affected by the massive earthquakes. The UN agency's spokesperson said that 4.6 million children across 10 provinces in Turkey have been impacted, while another 2.5 million children were affected in Syria. The spokesperson added that thousands of children have been killed, with others having lost their parents during the deadly earthquakes. Despite the rising death toll and other grim figures, reports of miraculous rescues continue to surface. 2 people were rescued alive in Turkey after being trapped under rubble for more than 200 hours. However, despite the ongoing search and rescue operations, authorities say the focus is now quickly being shifted to helping people struggling without food and shelter amid bitterly cold temperatures. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Western allies are gearing up to provide continued military support to Ukraine ahead of its spring offensive. This comes as Russia is also reportedly stepping up its military campaign. Lee Shi-woo has the latest.
Nearly a year into the war in Ukraine, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin on Tuesday said that he expects Ukraine to conduct an offensive against Russia in the spring. Speaking with reporters after a meeting with defense ministers of Ukraine's allies in Brussels, Austin said that members of the alliance will do all they can to ensure that Ukrainian forces obtain as much ammunition as quickly as possible. He also said that while the alliance does not foresee a massive aerial attack by Russia, they know that Moscow has a substantial number of aircraft in its inventory.
That's why we've emphasized that we need to do everything that we can to get Ukraine as much air defense capability as we possibly can.
Meanwhile, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg also reaffirmed the need for assistance for Ukraine. Saying that Russian President Vladimir Putin is preparing for more war, he said that the Allies' support for Ukraine will continue.
And it will continue because we need to ensure that Ukraine gets the weapons it needs to be able to retake territory, liberate the lands, and win this war and prevail as a sovereign independent nation.
Meanwhile, the U.S. is considering sending Ukraine thousands of weapons and more than 1 million rounds of ammunition seized off the coast of Yemen in recent months from smugglers suspected of working for Iran. That's according to a Wall Street Journal report on Tuesday, quoting unnamed U.S. and European officials. The journal reported that the move would open up a new supply of firepower that Ukraine's allies could tap into as they struggle to keep up with Ukraine's requests for military support. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
Starting Saturday, China will lift its visa restrictions on South Korean travelers. The Chinese embassy in Seoul announced on Wednesday that it will resume issuing short-term visas for South Koreans starting February 18th. This comes just a few days after South Korea lifted visa curbs on Chinese travelers. China suspended short-term visas for South Koreans last month in an apparent retaliation for Seoul's decision to stop issuing similar visas to travelers from China when Beijing saw a wave of infections after it ended its zero-COVID policy. Despite not having tested a solid-fuel intercontinental ballistic missile, it seems North Korea has created a separate unit within its military to operate such weapons. State media footage of the regime's latest military parade showed several flags bearing the same emblem of a missile flying beyond the Earth's atmosphere. One flag was spotted next to regime leader Kim Jong-un's wife as she entered the parade grounds, and another was attached to a launcher vehicle that is believed to have carried a new type of solid-fuel ICBM. These military flags indicate the existence of a unit focusing on developing, testing, and operating ICBMs, different from the Missile Bureau flag that emerged in pictures earlier this month. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's daughter Kim Joo-ae has been in the spotlight recently. Her increasing number of public appearances, combined with the regime's efforts to idolize the child, is raising speculation that young Kim may one day succeed her father. But experts say there may be more to her ascension into the public eye. Choi Min-jung reports.
The North Korean leader's daughter Kim Joo-ae has become the focus of attention around the world in recent days. Kim, who's believed to be around 9 years old, has recently made more public appearances with her father, Kim Jong-un. Last week, she was spotted at the 75th founding anniversary of the regime's army, walking the red carpet alongside her father and talking playfully with the leader. This comes in sharp contrast with where Kim's sister Kim Yo-jong was reportedly standing, as the Unification Ministry said that while she attended the parade, she appeared to be standing in a corner behind rows of soldiers, far from Kim Jong-un's family. Kim Joo-ae was first introduced to the media last November. Back then, state media described her as an adorable and noble daughter. However, now, the child is being referred to as the respected one. North Korea has recently been striving to idolize its leader's daughter as well. And on Tuesday, the regime unveiled new stamp designs featuring Kim Joo-ae for the first time. The new designs feature images of her attending the test firing of a Hwasong-17 ICBM last November. Out of a total 8 stamps, 5 include images of Kim Joo-ae with her father. The regime is also reportedly forcing people who have the same name as the leader's daughter to change their name. Citing multiple unnamed sources, Radio Free Asia last week reported that authorities in Pyongyang summoned women with the name Kim Joo-ae and ordered them to change their names. North Korea is known to have prohibited its people from using the same names as its leaders. The recent spotlight on the leader's daughter has also raised questions over the possibility of her becoming Kim Jong-un's successor. But experts say it is too early to tell.
So I think what Kim Jong-un really wants to send the message through, portraying her, his daughter, is that they are not really the bad guys, and also what they are doing is for the future generation to come, and because of that, they will never give up nuclear weapons, or they can never give up, developing missile programs.
Likewise, a researcher at the Institute for National Security Strategy said Kim Joo-ae symbolizes North Korea's future generations, and that her appearances at military events imply that North Korea's military power is centered on protecting the lives and safety of future generations. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Now turning over to the U.S., there are more signs that inflation is coming down. Consumer prices increased in January but continue to decline for the 7th consecutive month. However, the slowdown is not as quick as expected, prompting prospects of more aggressive rate hikes to come. U.S. consumer prices in the first month of 2023 increased by 6.4% compared to the same period last year. It marks the 7th consecutive month that a year-on-year slowdown has been reported and is well below a recent peak of 9.1% in June. But the latest data from the Labor Department shows that prices are not going down as quickly as expected. Inflation in January is only a 0.1 percentage point down from the 6.5% recorded in December. Watchers from Dow Jones and Wall Street have been looking for 6.2%. Adding to the disappointment is monthly inflation. Prices in January increased 0.5% from December, the most in 3 months, and far higher than December's 0.1% figure. Annual core inflation, which strips out volatile food and energy prices, jumped 5.6% on year and 0.4% on month. Rising housing rental costs accounted for over half of the monthly increase at 0.7% compared to December. Energy was also a significant contributor, with the seemingly stabilizing prices once again rising 2% on month. Following the hotter-than-expected inflation news, U.S. stocks fluctuated, adding pressure amid the prospect of further rate hikes, which are now at their highest levels since September 2007.
And I don't think that the numbers indicated that inflation is completely behind us, meaning they were a little bit maybe elevated relative to what some of the expectations were. So my outlook is sort of one of stagflation, and I think that is going to make it tough for the Fed and for investors.
President Biden, in the meantime, held the 7 months of declining yearly inflation, but said there's more work to do in the fight against high prices. President Yoon Suk-yeol says the government will push to keep train fares, road tolls, and postal service fees at the current level for the first half of this year in an effort to combat high inflation. Speaking at an emergency economic meeting on Wednesday, President Yoon added the government will control the rise of energy prices to ease the burden on working-class citizens. In the meantime, President Yoon called on the telecommunications and finance sectors to stabilize prices, pointing at their special market status through government-issued licenses. Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho and Chairman of the Financial Services Commission Kim Joo-hyun attended the meeting along with members of the cabinet. South Korea's export and import prices both fell for the 3rd consecutive month in January on the back of a stronger Korean won. Data from the Bank of Korea on Wednesday shows that the export price index stood at 114.28 last month, down 3% from December. Similarly, the import price index edged down 2.3% to 134.95 as prices of petroleum and coal products and chemical products fell as Korean won strengthened against the greenback. The exchange rate averaged around 1,247 won to the dollar in January, falling 3.8% from December. The number of people employed in South Korea last month was more than 400,000, higher than the year before. But the increase was the smallest since early 2021, Najeon reports.
The number of people employed in South Korea has risen for the 23rd month in a row, but the employment rate growth in January was at its slowest in 22 months. Data released by Statistics Korea on Wednesday shows that more than 27.3 million people were in employment as of last month, with an on-year increase of 411,000. This marks growth for the 23rd consecutive month, but it has slowed after hitting a peak in last May. In fact, this was the smallest rise since March 2021, when the country saw an on-year increase of 314,000 in the employment. The base effect was one of the main driving factors as the country added more than 1 million jobs in January last year. The nation's shrinking population also contributed to the drop in employment. Job growth was driven by people aged 60 and over, who accounted for about 97% of the total on-year gain. The government has been trying to provide more job opportunities to seniors, particularly in the healthcare sector. However, employment figures for those in their 20s and below and for those in their 40s declined compared to the previous year. By industry, the healthcare sector added the most jobs, followed by restaurants and accommodation. On the other hand, manufacturing saw an on-year decrease for the first time in 15 months, reflecting the economic slowdown under the weakened exports. Meanwhile, South Korea's unemployment rate dropped to its lowest for any January since 2014 to 3.6%. Statistics Korea said that the base effect will also have an impact on next month's figures.
The positive part is that there will be a recovery in daily life due to the recent easing of the indoor mask mandate. However, there is a base effect from last year and a negative impact from the economic slowdown due to lingering economic uncertainties. And these factors will affect the employment in February.
She added that weaker performance in the manufacturing sector will slow down job growth in February amid a global economic slowdown. 신하영, Arirang News.
In K-pop news, BTS member Suga will be the first of the group to hold a solo world tour. According to Big Hit Music on Wednesday, Suga, also known as August D, will start his world tour in April this year. He's set to tour 5 locations in the States before moving on to Indonesia, Thailand, Singapore, Seoul, and Japan. It is the first time that a member of BTS will perform a world tour on their own. This comes 6 months after BTS held their concert Yet to Come in Busan, and 2 months after the oldest member Jin enlisted in Korea's mandatory military service. South Korean reality survival TV show Physical 100 has taken the #1 spot on Netflix non-English TV show chart. Netflix released its weekly top 10 on Wednesday, which showed that viewers in 78 countries spent a total of 41.6 million hours watching the hit show between February 6th and 12th. The reality show has spent 3 weeks in the top 10 since its release. The show features 100 contestants competing against each other to claim a cash reward of around $235,000 US. Breathing life into nature, a South Korean master artisan has spent 57 years creating traditional Korean craft work using lakwan and mother of pearl, a shiny material made by some shellfish. Our Shin Se-byuk has the story.
Brilliant, shimmering hues glimmer in the light. This is the beauty of Najeon, a Korean traditional craft that brings together mother-of-pearl inlays and lacquerware. The technique has been handed down for centuries in South Korea. Choi Sang-hoon, one of the 3 Najeon master artisans recently named by the Cultural Heritage Administration, has dedicated more than half a century to creating traditional Najeon crafts. Creating these complex crafts demands perseverance. It begins with the base, filling the gaps with freshly made clay glue. Once dried, the artisan draws the outline. And a natural glue made of fish gelatin is carefully applied to make sure the mother of pearls are well attached to the surface. And here begins the real magic. Cutting mother of pearl into shapes and threads. A delicate touch and precise cutting are needed to ensure the highest quality.
0.029까지 나와요.
Creating each piece can take several weeks or even months. But finding authentic Najeon craft work has become rare with mass production.
Moving away from traditional methods isn't necessarily wrong. You swim with the tide. Crafts change as things become modernized, and there are people like me who keep traditions alive.
Still, he says he feels obliged to pass down the skills to the next generation as a designated master artisan. He has 4 students who want to continue his legacy.
It's a call of duty, a duty given to me by the country to keep the tradition alive. Not many want to learn this traditional craft because you can't use it to build big wealth. But I'm lucky. I have my students here. I will pass down all I have to them. That's hope.
As a craftsman preserving the spirit of Najeon artisanship, Choi says the magic of it lies in creating art from scratch.
Painters draw pictures with paint, and I'm a painter who draws with mother of pearl. We breathe life into discarded seashells and lacquer trees. All Najeon ingredients are from nature. That's how we create things from scratch. Najeon itself is nature.
신새벽, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In the United States, a gunman opened fire on students at Michigan State University in East Lansing, Michigan on Monday local time, killing 3 and injuring 5. The suspected gunman was later found dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound after being cornered by police officers while on the run. All 5 injured in the shooting have been hospitalized and are in critical condition. Authorities say the suspected gunman, a 43-year-old male, has been identified. He had no known connections to the university, and the motive for the attack is still unknown. Speaking on the incident, U.S. President Joe Biden said that victims and families grieving loss from mass shootings are owed gun reform. He said that the shooting came just a day before the 5-year anniversary of the Parkland High School shooting, where 17 people were killed. Turning our attention to the European Union now, which has approved a plan that effectively bans the sale of new fossil fuel cars by the year 2035. The law was passed by the European Parliament in Strasbourg on Tuesday local time. It requires all car manufacturers in the 27-nation bloc to cut 100% of all CO2 emissions by 2035. Lawmakers also supported requirements for car makers to reduce carbon emissions from new vehicles by 55% by 2030 compared to 2021 levels. That's higher than the previous 37.5% target. The new measure marks accelerated efforts to switch to electric vehicles and tackle climate change. Data shows that cars make up 12% of the EU's total carbon emissions. Meanwhile, in the Gaza Strip, archaeologists have uncovered a Roman-era sarcophagus. The Palestinian Ministry of Antiquities and Tourism announced the discovery on Tuesday local time, saying the artifact was found at a 2,000-year-old Roman cemetery. The sarcophagus is made from lead, and experts believe it belonged to a high-profile figure. It will be studied by a team of local and international experts and will be opened once an expert in metals is available. The find was among 90 individual and mass graves at a Roman cemetery that was discovered last year. The Gaza Strip is a hotbed for such finds, having served as a trading spot for various civilizations since the ancient Egyptians. And finally, the French town of Saint-Valentin saw an influx of visitors on Tuesday as couples flocked to the normally quiet area to celebrate Valentine's Day. Known as a popular destination for lovers, the remote town in central France has roads, street lamps, and even postage stamps designed to celebrate couples. Most popular is Saint Valentin's unique love certificate, delivered by the town's mayor. But this year the item was in such demand that the town ran out and was forced to turn couples away. Saint Valentin offered 3 days of love-themed activities this year, including a couples mass, tree planting, gourmet food markets, and romantic concerts. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Those on the East Coast are having harsh winter weather. Strong easterly winds have been bringing heavy snowfall to eastern parts of the country with a heavy snow advisory issued. But most of the snow should let up by late this afternoon, so please stay safe out there. Meanwhile, Jeju Island will see a mix of rain and snow into tomorrow afternoon. Highs will go up to a similar range to yesterday in central parts of the country. Seoul seeing a high of 7 degrees, a couple of degrees higher than seasonal norms. But chilly winds are making it feel colder than actual temperatures, so please stay dressed in layers. However, southern provinces are having highs going 4 to 5 degrees lower than Tuesday, hovering just above 5 degrees Celsius this afternoon under cloudier skies in most parts of the country. And it will gradually get warmer as we head into the weekend, while southern parts of the country will receive another band of rainfall this weekend, then colder air returns next week. With that in mind, here's a look at the weather conditions around the globe.
Thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of the day.